Hey guys, I know if you're tuning into my show especially, there's a good chance you watch a good amount of competitive Dota 2, a lot of those streams out there. And as we get into the new season, a site you should be looking out for is one called blinkpredict.com. It's actually a new way to watch Dota. It's actually free to play, but you can win Dota skins using your Dota knowledge. You actually predict things like the most last hits at X time, who will take the next Aegis, when will the next tower fall, etc. Honestly, a lot of these things that you would be doing normally in the game as well, more so for fun, but this is a way to actually earn prizes. Again, blinkpredict.com. Sign up with your email or your Facebook or your Google whatever, and then you beat the market by correctly answering in-game questions throughout a game and take points from the community. Check it out, guys. blinkpredict.com. Have some fun while watching some Dota. And now for the show. All right, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the DotPro with BreakyCPK. I am BreakyCPK, of course, and once again, excited for you guys to be here on what's going to be another fun show ahead of us. May not necessarily be the longest show here. I'm gonna start right off the bat with that, but who knows? We'll actually see. But I am super excited for this show, mainly for the reason, in just a little bit, we are going to be joined by the legend himself, EternaLEnVy, will be joining us, and he's going to be talking about both what happened throughout this last year with Team NP and Cloud9, about his TI7 experience, what he thinks about the roster shuffle, how that played out, and of course all the way into his announcement of his newest team, now joining Fnatic here, the organization, and forming a team around that, and how that team came about as well. So shortly here, we will be joined by EternaLEnVy to talk a lot, and something tells me he may have some fun things to talk about. He's a guy that's shown many times in the past he's not afraid to say certain things. He's notorious for writing the blog posts that he does, and so curious to see what kind of information we get out of him in the podcast show later on today when we do sit down with him, but. As well as on the show, right off the bat, I want to say I will not be joined by Z-Rock later on. Unfortunately, he had to go away for the weekend here. He's going to be attending a wedding, I believe. I think it's his brother's wedding, actually. So, obviously, well, congratulations to his brother, I guess. But on top of that, he is not going to be on the show. However, I will just be doing I'll be doing a solo later on and talking about some things that are going on in the scene. I had some plans, some fun plans that we were going to be doing, but I'll postpone them to the following week when he will be able to join once again. But before we get into things later on, of course, the EternaLEnVy interview, I want to go over what I like to call the good, the bad, and the ugly. Okay, starting with the good here. I think it's going to be pretty obvious where we start, and that's the roster shuffle. Once again, continuing, and actually is coming to a place where we have a pretty good idea overall as far as where people are ending up now. There are still a couple of players out there that are in somewhat limbo that, you kind of scratch your head a little bit at and wonder, well, where are these guys going to end up? But that's just how it goes, and I'm sure as time continues to move on here, perhaps as these early qualifiers start taking place, maybe players will get replaced. Who knows? But we've definitely had plenty more roster changes take place throughout this week here, leading into the show today. So I want to kind of go over them here and talk about what took place. So we'll start from, I believe, I'm kind of looking at it right now, and I want to start obviously at the place that makes the most sense here. Okay, yeah, that's right. Let's start with Evil Geniuses. So Evil Geniuses, I actually remember last week's show, we were talking about how Fear was labeled as a coach, and I was talking with Z-Rock there about the idea that something tells me there's a reason they put that. They made a point to make him the coach there, and that had me believing that that might have been because they were actually going to be announcing another player. Initially, when this quote-unquote leak came out from LGD fan, of course, he did list Fear as the new 5 position for the team. But again, I was kind of second-guessing that a little bit for this one. Well, I should have had trust in LGD fan, because I'm pretty sure the day after our podcast came out, the EG announcement happened, and sure enough, Fear did officially announce that he is coming back. He's going to be playing the 5 position for the team. Of course, tons of people are excited. He's coming out of retirement. I got to say the video for it was pretty awesome as well. If you didn't get the chance to check it out, I highly recommend it. It was basically him kind of sitting down watching what was a lot of retired athletes coming out of retirement, or more so, it was actually like older athletes, still winning championships. I think Tom Brady was specifically part of it, of course, the New England Patriots there, and how he's 40 years old now, and he's won 5 Super Bowls, including this last year. He's projected to do well this year, so it kind of was having him relate to that, where just because he's an older player doesn't mean he can't come back and still have a lot of success. So it was very cool to see. Obviously, I know a lot of people are excited for it. I will say I haven't truly been able to experience Fear because, again, just joining the scene this last year, really being heavily involved. He, of course, wasn't playing this last year. This was the year he was retired for. But I've heard plenty, and I do recall bits and pieces. Of course, obviously, I know he's part of the TI5 run for EG that ultimately where they won TI, and a big part of that. It is very interesting to see how he will do in the 5 position, but I think it's fair to say, being older, being wiser even, playing that 5 role, I'm sure he's going to do just fine. And essentially coming back also to be the captain, though, of the team. This also does mean Crit is going to be moving to the 4 position, of course, for them as well. And everything else will remain the same. Sumail Universe and, of course, Arteezy, obviously still a part of it. But yeah, Fear is going to be taking over as the captain. And I'm sure that I would be pretty worried if I was other teams now, looking at EG, and this change alone, I think, is really going to have high hopes for them, because honestly, I really think that the biggest issue last year was the drafting / captaining, and it's nothing against Crit, because to be fair, to Crit's credit, he did make a point. He was very open about this, both early on in the year and even after the year had ended, that he didn't necessarily want to be in that role. He just it just fell to him because of how things played out with the team, and no one else really did. So it's like, well, he's the 5 support. I guess he's going to be the captain, So that maybe it wasn't necessarily something he was the most comfortable with, and he, like I said, he wasn't afraid to talk about that. So now he kind of, lifts off his shoulders a little bit. He'll still give his input, I'm sure, as I believe I saw him even mention that. But Fear will overall be the new captain and the drafter and everything for the team. Another big announcement was, once again, another case of LGD fan being right. And as well as myself, I'll say that. Resolution going to OG. Yes, indeed. Where would Resolution end up? He is, of course, was pretty much the hottest name out there as far as this roster shuffle went. We all knew that he was going to be sought after by many of teams, but in the end, he does end up with OG. So, not surprising to me, mainly because of the name that OG is and how good of a team they have around what will now be Resolution. Now, I was curious if this did happen. I think when we talked about it, would that mean No-Tail would move to the 2, and would Resolution actually play the 1 position? It turns out they officially announced that No-Tail will be the 1 still, and Resolution is going to be their mid player. He is going to be their 2 position. So it could very likely be a case of Matoma Band Miracle with Team Liquid, where they're perhaps going to interchange with whatever hero and who's more comfortable, whatever. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. But as it's labeled, No-Tail will be the 1, Resolution's going to be the 2. This is another huge pickup, of course. I'm sure he got a great deal out of this, but OG also got a great deal out of this. Again, I was a protector of Anna throughout the season. I thought Anna was a lot better player than people gave him credit for. He seemed to be the scapegoat a lot of the time for the team. I'm not saying he was the best mid player necessarily, but I think he was better than what we saw, or what the masses seem to be saying, especially when it came to Reddit or whatever. But Resolution is no doubt one of the best core position players we have in the scene nowadays. And he definitely showed that in TI7 here with this run that he had, how he essentially put Empire as a team on his back with very little preparation, and had some very impressive results, including the big one, of course, defeating Evil Geniuses. You got to kind of wonder, if they didn't beat Evil Geniuses there, would this be happening? I mean, to be fair, because Resolution has always been known as a great core player, but it just seemed like that hype train just really took off when they 2-0'd Evil Geniuses, right? If they drop 0-2 to Evil Geniuses, is this the same? Does Resolution end up on OG ultimately? I think it's still very possible, but I think that is something to kind of just look at, actually, and take almost a little bit of a break here and be like, well, maybe he is riding a bit of a hype train right now. Is he really this good? I personally think yes. I absolutely do. And again, because he has been good for a while now. I know Blitz actually has talked about this, of course, formerly the coach of DC and what was then Planet Odd, the team that he was playing for there. He was talking about, as Resolution was announced as the ringer for Empire, that he's one of the most underrated and he thinks the best carry player in the world. So it's been out there, but I do think this hype of what happened at TI7, and deservingly so once again, definitely made him the hot topic here in the roster shuffle. But he ends up with OG. Was there a chance, perhaps with something like a team secret? Was it going to be, PPD stack? Who knows? But OG is where he ultimately is going to be going. So that's big news there. As I'm going through this now, too, China had a lot of roster shuffle going on. I don't want to sit here and necessarily go through every single one, but to say the least, there was quite a bit of changes that happened in the Chinese region. However, NaVi and LFY did remain untouched. They were two of the bigger Chinese teams that do still have their full same 5-man rosters. From what I can tell, at least. So I think that's important to stress out. Now, I don't know if necessarily an announcement has been made that will be the case 100%, but because we haven't seen anything yet and we saw all these other roster shuffles happening amongst Chinese teams, leads me to believe that will be the case. And I think to really no one's surprise, right? Both NaVi and LFY, very good teams, finishing second and third at TI7, and you'd expect them to definitely be sticking together there. Moving up the list, Jonas found Hanskin, Limp. These guys here, we talked about an era even, when eventually they were announced no longer a part of Alliance. Where were they all going to end up? Well, in the case of Era, Jonas Fan, and Hanskin, they actually are pairing up with Cinderin as well as a player named Mage, who I believe is from, where is he from? He's from Jordan, actually, yeah. This is a new 5-man team, and they were formed a couple of days ago here. Mage, I really don't know much about. I'm actually looking at his Wikipedia right now. Okay, I guess he has been around a little bit. He's a 21-year-old player. He is going to be their mid player for the team. But as far as previous teams he's been on a team called Spotnet. Other than that, or Elab is another one back in 2016, so this last year here. But again, he hasn't necessarily been on a big name top tier team, such as what you could argue this one will be with the players that he's playing with here. So he's kind of has a little bit of pressure, I think it's fair to say. But outside of him, obviously all players that we are very comfortable with, we know very well. We got the 3 Swedes, Cinderin and Mage. So interested to see how this team comes together. They do not have a team name yet, I don't believe, but announcing that this will be a 5-man roster. As you notice, Limp not a part of that, of course. And, well, you know what? I'll just get into that one right now. I am so excited for this, man. I'm not going to lie. I was sitting on this for a little bit. I did know that this was going to be happening. It was just a matter of when the announcement actually came out. Limp and Chessie are going to Complexity. The brothers are reuniting once again, going to Complexity. They're replacing what was Demon and Firo at the end of last season, of course. They join up with Swinamons, who is now known as Kyle, by the way. He's actually making a point to switch his name up to Kyle. That's what he will go by in game. So he's trying to. So I'll do my best to call him that as well. But Kyle and Z-Freak, and then of course Moo is transitioning back to the off lane. Chessie will be the 1 position, and Limp will play the 2 position. Kyle will be going back now to the 5 position, and Z-Freak, of course, will be playing the 4 position. This essentially is former Stay Green minus a Keizu in the off lane, right? So I'm super excited for this. This is going to be the team that I personally have high hopes for and will be rooting for, no doubt, throughout this upcoming season. And I genuinely think has actually a very good chance. They've proven they've been comfortable players together in the past, not only in Han, but even in Dota, of course. And really cannot wait to see these guys coming together again. Moo gets to go back to his much more comfortable offlane, I feel like, as well. My only concern is that Kyle is going to be playing the 5 position once again. But as we've talked about, Kyle's a player that makes a sacrifice for the team. He does what is necessary to, get his team in there and ultimately a success. And so if that means him playing the 5 position again, so be it. I say that because it does feel a little off watching them throughout this last season, even especially in the early parts where he was playing the 5. He seemed a little too over the top at points. He seemed too, and even when I had him on earlier in the year, in fact, he kind of talked about this. He likes to be the guy leading the charge, right? He likes to be the guy in the front lines, the initiator. The offlane kind of allowed him to do that, play such roles such as an Earthshaker more effectively. As the 5 position, you're not necessarily doing that though. It's just that mental, that mindset that he has to have of, picking up on that and still being able to captain and lead the team to success. But outside of that, I honestly am pretty confident this could potentially be a team to look out for in especially the North American region, which is no doubt proving to be to get tougher and tougher as time moves on here. In fact, on top of that, more news coming out. What was formerly known as the team Is GG, now officially known as VGJ Storm. That's right, VGJ, the team owned by Jeremy Lin, the NBA basketball player, the star of sorts from China. This is this organization. Of course, they had a Chinese team last year. They are keeping their Chinese team, and I believe they go by the name VGJ Thunder. But they did announce also an American pickup of VGJ Storm of what will be Ritsu, 747, Snake King, Flea, and Stan King. This is one of those teams where I do kind of wish Z-Rock was able to join me on the show, because I know that he has plenty of insight on this team as a whole and the guys. And obviously, I'm sure we'll get to it next week when he is able to join once again. But I mean, I definitely have some history with these guys as well, specifically Snake King and Stan King from even the earlier on Han days. And I know all these guys have been around the scene for a very long time. Definitely another kind of scary team to look out for on the competitive scene. I know they're very well respected as far as their play goes. I believe Xerox actually mentioned that he thinks Stan King is one of the better supports out there in general. So again, I'll let him speak for that when he talks about this team. But that team officially announced, again, VGJ Storm coming out here. So that was one of the little bit of the surprise teams that did come out as far as the announcements go. So we got them right there. We got another team being announced here, kinda. So this was a little bit awkward of a one, because we had this announcement come out for what was Black, the player Black, that is, of DC South America. And this announcement came out of this new DC South American team, and Black was one of the players, apparently. And so you're kind of looking, it's like, oh, okay, Black's now playing in South America. Why not believe it, right? He's essentially playing in every other region. I guess now he's looking to play in South America. Well, apparently that that wasn't true because Black sent out a tweet. I guess he was on a plane when the message came out, and then he gets all these tweets when he lands, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm in Germany, by the way, and I'm definitely not on this team, so I don't know what this is about." So, yeah, that happened. And as I'm talking about this, actually, I want to kind of tease a little bit about next week's show. I do get the chance to sit down with Black, and he will be on next week's show, and we do get to talk about this situation here as far as what his future holds and everything. So definitely look forward to that. But back to this team. This team then, they were playing in what's called the King's Cup, which is an event going on. It's essentially the North American qualifiers for the BTS event coming up here. And DC South America was set to play on day number 1, which was September 6th here. And up until the match, their roster had yet to be announced. So essentially, their roster got announced at the match itself. And it ended up being what looks like to be HFN, Yarwar, King Tekka, King RD, and Matthew. So it actually ended up being the same 4 players around what in this case is now Yarwar. So I guess, Black potentially could have been that player. Again, we will talk with him. We'll get that all figured out, at least from his perspective there. But Yarwar is actually playing further mid for now. I don't know if that's something that will stand or not, but he is currently there. But it is kind of cool, too, seeing the idea of a Digital Chaos South American team. We got the sister team coming out. It's something that is pretty popular in the Chinese region, but outside of China, we haven't really seen a lot of it. But DC kind of expanding here and going into South America. While we're on the topic of DC, they're still one of the teams that has yet to be announced here as far as their official new roster. Now, we know for a fact that obviously Forev and Dubu are no longer a part of the team. Well, because of another roster announcement, Forev and Dubu are now back together with QO, MP, and Febby, and they're bringing back what was essentially MVP Phoenix. They're now known as Team Phoenix here. That's pretty cool news. Again, this is a team that had that crazy run at TI6, almost out of nowhere, it felt like. And a team from South Korea. This last year, they spread their wings in a sense and, went all over the place to different teams. Now they're back together. That's actually pretty fun to see. And I'm looking forward to seeing how they do. Back to Digital Chaos, though. So that leaves us with what's Mason, Abed, and Bulba. There's rumors out there, and there's good reason to believe that Moon Meander is actually going to be the new 5 position for this team. And wait, who am I missing now? Oh, I'm on the spot here, and now I'm missing who was going to be their off lane. Oh, now I'm blanking here. So Moon Meander is going to be the new 5 position. I'm not sure who we can expect to see in their off lane /4 position. I think there's a chance Bulba could move to the 3, and they could have a new 4 position player. But with that said as well, Abed hasn't even necessarily... We haven't really heard much about Abed. So I'm blanking on the other player that potentially could be a new 5th for these guys. But honestly, probably it doesn't matter because I think there's a good reason they haven't announced their team yet. And something tells me it's along the lines of they don't possibly know what their new team is going to be 100% yet. So, but that is obviously another team that we are going to be looking out for here, of course, and seeing what they're able to put together ultimately. But Moon Meander playing the 5 position, I've talked about that on my stream a little bit, the potential there. I mean, we'll essentially wait till any official announcement comes out from them, but that, to me, my initial reaction is like, that's almost odd to hear about, but he is an older Moon Meander. It's not the same Moon that I remember from the early Han days, of course, and the Neva Eva, spamming, trash talking constantly, so I guess I could see him more as time has gone on here, but that'll be fun to see what the new DC roster ultimately ends up being, so... Whew. All right. Yeah, as you can tell, there's a lot of roster shuffle going on. Hopefully you're keeping up. Obviously, Liquipedia does a good job of helping you with all this information as well. if you are not for whatever reason. There have been a couple of other changes, some smaller changes here and there. Don't know if it's really worth mentioning, but oh, well, there are here. We'll mention Roger and Crystallize going to NaVi. So Roger, formerly now of Empire, moving on to NaVi as a new 4-position player for them, joining the likes of what is Dendi, General, and Seneko. And then Crystallize, the new 1-position player. This is a guy, I guess he's just in general newer to the scene. I think they had an announcement. Let me see if it says anything on the announcement here. As far as a young player who came in the spotlight of the pro scene as a member of Double Dimensions. That's right. So he's a former player of Double Dimensions here, another CIS team, an up-and-coming team, which has done well, but never, that crazy. But so he's a younger player, though, looking to make a name for himself, and of course has the chance now with the likes of NaVi. So definitely worth mentioning that change there. As I know, NaVi is a very prestigious organization, to say the least. Oh yeah, and one other team that we didn't talk about yet that we definitely should is the Dire, aka Peter Pan Dam's new stack. So once again, as expected, Pycat, CCNC, Zai, Misery, and PPD is this new 5-man squad. On paper, it definitely sounds like a potentially strong team. Again, you do look at it, their weaknesses could possibly be the idea that CCNC is still a very young and newer player as far as top tier competitive Dota goes. Pycat, he's been out of the scene for a little bit here. Not that necessarily means he's going to be bad, but when a player hasn't necessarily been playing, a lot. Okay, I take that back. Obviously, he was playing for NaVi here throughout this last year, but again, NaVi had, to say the least, not the most success throughout this last season, especially. To me, I don't know. I guess where I'm getting at is when I think PPD announcing a comeback to competitive Dota 2, and especially able to bring Zion as his offlane player, I don't know if I necessarily expected it to be Pycat. And something tells me that he probably wasn't their first choice either, if you understand what I mean. So Pycat's a great player. Was he their first choice? Possibly not. But he is still a solid 1-position player, and I'm sure potentially it's going to be good for them. This is a team, though, as well, that it's going to take some time to mesh. I think they're going to have some pressure because people think, oh, PPD, TI5 winner, he's coming back with Misery, a notoriously great player that's been to so many TIs up until this last year. Zai is one of the better offlaner / 4-position players we have on the scene. You got these big names, but I really think people should kind of, take a step back, take a breather. Something tells me it's going to take some time. And you know what? They have some time. They got a lot of events to practice. I assume, and from my understanding, especially now seeing this roster too, that this is a team that's also all in. This is not team wanted. This is not PPD doing I just want to have fun again, or I just want to kind of play Dota 2. They want to, I'm sure, have a lot of success and perhaps even expect that. So down the line, I could see that happening, but early on, no doubt, I'm sure they're going to have some bumps in the road, I think is ultimately the best way to put it. Okay, I'm going through, looking, double checking. I think that covers all of it as far as really the noteworthy roster changes. Coming out here. All right, so only 30 minutes. Maybe this will be a longer show than expected here. So that was the good. All those roster changes. Okay, so there actually is another roster change, but I was saving it on purpose for the bad here. Whether this is fair or not, whatever. But Team Secret. So Team Secret announced their new players. Team Secret has, been known as a fairly, big organization in the Dota 2 scene especially. And then their announcement came out, and it was Ace and Fata. and I took a step back. I'm like, wait, what? Really? Ace and Fata, interesting. Of course, these two players, formerly of what was Danish Bears in the previous year, they kind of went their separate ways. Fata, obviously, going on and joining C9 in the later part. My biggest thing with this, though, is one, I see a name like Ace coming to an organization like Team Secret, and Ace, yes, a good player, but similar to the PPD situation, I guess I didn't necessarily see or think it. I almost expected bigger, right? But to be fair, you do have to look at what were the options. Well, Resolution again potentially was one of the options, to be fair, but only one team can have him, obviously. There's a player by the name of Black out there, as I mentioned earlier. He's another really big name player that I potentially could have seen, perhaps, on the team. Oh, MSS is who I was thinking earlier. Wow, I don't know how I forgot about MSS for DC. Anyways, that just hit me. That kind of leads into what I'm going to bring up here, though. So Team Secret, Ace is one thing, but then Fata as the offlane for the team. This is the one that really had me scratching my head. I was going back to the history of Fata as well. He has never played offlane. He's always played mid or even maybe a little bit of the one position. But I think mid especially is where he's been comfortable and pretty much competed at. Now, when Team Secret announced their dropping of MP and then Keizu at the time, one of the big things that stood out to me that Puppy had suggested, or the team or whatever, was, especially more so for Keizu, they wanted to get somebody with more experience. I think I already talked about this when that announcement came out, that I don't even necessarily see the logic there, because we're talking about a player that literally has already been to 2 TIs. Like, how much experience are you really expecting? Anyways, you can listen to that previous podcast for my point there. But then to go out and replace him with a player that has never played the position before on the competitive level, not that he can't, I guess I just feel like something tells me this was another case of Team Secret maybe was expecting something else, right? They were probably expecting another name. Whether that other name was something along the lines of a Resolution Moon Meander, or as far as an offlaner goes, even a name like MSS, going back to that name once again, that's very possible. I find it hard to believe that Fata all of a sudden, was this choice that they were really going after. And to be fair, Keizu did actually make a point eventually later on that this was the case when it came to Team Secret's decision as far as who their new 3 position would be, that it was going to be somebody that maybe wasn't necessarily one of their first or second best options. And I think, if anything, this should be a learning experience for a team like Team Secret, in that just because there's potentially players out there that you in your mind may think that may fit better for whatever reason, doesn't necessarily mean it's just going to guarantee end up working that way. And I can't sit here and say I know the ins and outs of how this whole transaction went down of releasing Keizu and everything, but from my understanding, I will say from just talking with Keizu a little bit I did at TI, and after this all played out, was I don't know if this is something that Keizu wanted to continue to be a part of Secret, I'm pretty sure. I don't think the decision of him getting removed was his decision by any means. It was the Secret/Puppy's decision. And then they come out with this announcement as a replacement. It doesn't make sense to me. But Team Secret, again, potentially still is going to be a solid team, no doubt. Really, though, it's going to be interesting to see how Fata fits into that 3 position and how it all comes together for them. But of course, Keizu does have his new roster. We talked about it last week. That came out right before the show there. So that's the bad. And then the ugly. I'm going to keep this one pretty short and sweet, but the ugly here is, here we are. We're actually already starting qualifiers. We talked about this, how the BTS qualifier, and I'll talk about it a little bit more on the show here, but the BTS qualifier for the North America region is already starting up with the King's Cup. More and more tweets have been coming out from players and even the organizations. I know Beef has been very open about this for the complexity of their manager, their player manager. There's still no announcement on the point system. Teams still have no clue on what the point system is, how many points are worth for attending certain events, or what you're looking at getting. Yet they're being contacted about scheduling events. It's not fair. Like, how can they be expected to schedule these events when one of the bigger things we've been stressing with this whole new announcement was that teams are going to have to be careful as far as picking and choosing which events they want to attend because of the new point system. We're in a limbo spot right now where without this announcement, and I think I mentioned in last week's show that there was part of me that wanted to believe that, well, just because we're not hearing about it, possibly it is happening behind the scenes. No, from what we're seeing with these tweets, that's not the case. Literally, Valve just is not communicating this to the teams in the sense of what the point system looks like and how that's ultimately going to play out. So maybe it'll eventually come out here throughout this week, Ethan, and it's something that we'll kind of all forget, and life will move on. But it's getting to a dangerous point, even, of if this information doesn't come out, teams could start to get screwed over, / the idea of them committing to an event and then backing out after the information comes out because they didn't know a certain thing, or now they have conflicting schedules. It could really start a cluster for these events. It could kind of make a backup of issues as the season is getting kicked off here, which could kind of trickle down throughout the year. So I really hope that information does come out. I can't imagine what honestly is taking so long for it to come out, but it needs to come out is the ultimate point. All right, guys. I know you're enough. You're done hearing what I have to say here about what's been going on this last week. We're going to be joined by EternaLEnVy of now the new Team Fnatic. He's going to be talking to us about plenty. Again, what happened this last year, what's going to be happening this coming year, everything in between. I'm really excited for it. Stay tuned, guys. We'll be right back with EternaLEnVy. All right, guys, so now I am super excited to be joined by the legend himself, EternaLEnVy. How's it going, man?
The legend, dude. That's only load of it.
No. You're quite the legend in your own right, man. You got quite the fan base out there.
Sure.
Come on now. Sure, come on now. No, but well, EternaLEnVy, I'm really happy to have you on the show here. First off, how were your travels to Southeast Asia?
I mean, it's better for me than it was for Excalibur and Pi because I actually pre-adjusted.
Okay.
So when I came over, I wasn't jet lagged anyway whatsoever. Like that, yeah.
Where actually are you in over that region?
I think it's called. I mean, honestly, I don't freaking know, but it's called like. I think I'm pretty sure it's Kuala Lumpur or something.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know. I've left the host once to go to McDonald's.
Oh my god! So you're
just
somewhere to play Dota. That's what matters.
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, I was in my house.
Okay. Are you in the Fnatic team house or?
Yeah, in the Fnatic team house. I might they're moving to a new house, in like, I'm not sure, in a month or something. And then I might move in with my girlfriend to a different to a condo that's like a 5-minute walk away. Or not. Well, it really depends on what happens. But yeah, I might do that. But for now, I live in the house.
Okay, so maybe still trying to get that figured out, but well, it's safe to say you do have some time. Obviously, things are just getting started here in the season. But so is the whole team there at the house with you yet, or?
Yeah, everyone's there. We've been scrimming for the last a week or so.
Okay, and how's that been going? I got to ask off the bat.
I mean, it really depends. Like we lose like half our games, but like we win with certain strategies. like all the time, and then we don't win with some strategies, and we keep trying, we keep losing with them. So it's really hard to say. It really depends. Like the scrims don't really matter that much. It's like it's what you do from the scrims and then how you use it in the official. Like maybe you have some strategies and you're gonna use them in the official, but who knows? Maybe they had some strategies that are really good in the official as well.
Well, before we go too much with Fnatic here, I want to talk a little bit about this last year here, what happened with not only your journey, your team, though. Team NP, of course, came about. First off, what was it like to start your own team and organization with Team NP? What was that process like, and would you maybe do it again if you had the chance?
Well, first I have to explain like why I even did it. So, like basically, I played for 2 orgs. I played for Secret and C9. And back then, the orgs didn't really make sense to play for in terms of Dota because they would take a very large prize cut. And Dota's prize pool is like 10 to 100x or something. Like I don't know what's the x is, like what's the multiple, but it's insane. Like, of prize pool, and the cuts were like the same. Like it's like 10, 20%. 20 more than 20% sometimes, like whatever. And I ended up losing out on money on every org I ever played for, which like whatever, like honestly, like. But that's kind of like there wasn't really a real incentive in playing for an org, especially if you're like contract to them. And the idea of MP was like I wanted people like if there are people gonna stay, then they stay, because they want to stay. Because in Dota it's like you have these like periods where what's it called, like the drop up periods or whatever, or
the roster shuffle.
Yeah, you have like 2 of them a year or 3 of them a year or something, and like to follow that you can't be part of our kind of, or maybe you can, but there's gonna be like file fees or annoying shit or whatever, and like what's the point if you're not gonna really get anything out of it, right? And especially like any team, like they want to win TI, right? They aim for the best. And generally, you only benefit from orgs if you're losing all the time. So in our case, actually, it would have been beneficial to join org.
Okay.
At least in the first like 9 months or something before TI. But yeah, there's a bunch of stuff that happened on Secret. I thought it could be done better, so I wanted to do it because, like, why not? And I want to see how it's like. Like, at first, when we made it, it was like, so we need to make a bootcamp, right? And we needed to find sponsors for that bootcamp. And so, like, the bootcamp, we had to find a house, we had to, like, get computers, we had to do a bunch of stuff to get beds. I want everyone to have solo rooms, blah, blah, blah. Like, chairs. So, yeah, it's kind of hectic. But I always fit in my time. Like, I always try to finish everything in one shot, and I have people helping me, and Ren and Helen helping me. So, setting up bootcamps and stuff, it wasn't too hard. Finding sponsors, it was like, in a sense, it wasn't too hard either because they came to you instead, and I sometimes go to them and it works, but usually they go to you. So I found a lot of sponsors right away. But what I realized about like later on, or from talking to other people even in the past and like recalling my memories of what happened when I talked to Jack or whoever, is like you really need to sign these multi-year contracts in order for your org to truly survive. So what ended up happening was like I found enough sponsors to last like to actually hit the C9 mark or something like that I got offered, but like you end up losing them in a few months. They're always like trial runs or whatever, and to be honest, Dota, like you don't really get much out of it. It's actually it's a pretty mediocre game to invest into, unless they're owning. And we weren't that, right? So we couldn't ever land any real big sponsors of like say like Logitech or HyperX or like really like Monster or whatever. And like we got all these a bunch of like weird sponsors, which is fine, but like it's hard to have them like long lasting, like big company, like multi-year sponsors.
Yeah.
And like at one point I didn't want to keep just renewing sponsors because I could have kept looking and get more and then lose some and then get more and lose some, but because like for sponsors it's also like the initial burst is the most important. Like for example, FYM hot sauce, we sold like probably more than half of our sales in the entire year in the first like 1 or 2 months, right? So for them, it doesn't really make any sense to keep sponsoring a team after the first few months, unless that team grows like crazy. You know, like we get on our team, we get a CS:GO team or whatever. But yeah, whatever. I didn't want to deal with it.
It's a lot of work.
Yeah, it does like it does take away from your playing like a little bit, and like a little bit is enough to like you like in this game. If you want to win, you really need to put everything into it, and you can't fuck around anyway.
Would you say that being in your position with Team NP, trying to maybe focus on the business side as well, did that hurt you and your team throughout the year?
I doubt it. Like, no, it hurt us for a little bit. Like, for sure, it hurts us. Like, but I don't think it makes a big enough factor to like that. That can't be really an excuse. It's more like a personal issue that doesn't really matter. Like, for example, like you know, maybe me and my mom get into a fight, you know, and like maybe that like matters for like a week, but a little bit, you know, and like it happens a little bit more than usual that year than another year, but you can't really say that's what affects your team. In the end, it's all about your team synergy.
Yeah.
Or players like / player skill, like and / like understanding of draft, and like those three combined just weren't good enough to win.
Well, so speaking of that, again, throughout the year, a big transition that happened with the team was you eventually made the decision to remove SVG as well as 1437 and bring on a couple other named players in Fata and Pylai Die. First, about the SVG and 1437, what was the decision ultimately to have them removed, would you say?
Well, I mean, like for these sort of things, it really takes a longer explanation. Like first, the team, like this year, like when I made that team, it was like not with like star-studded players, right? Like I went through this experience of Artesia and Universe and like whatever.
Yeah.
And in the past, like when I first started playing, I actually always aimed to have players that weren't known yet, because like it was my idea that I wanted to win with something fresh. It was the coolest thing possible. Mm-hmm. It was so silly idea, but like whatever. That's what I did. Like that's why I didn't join EG like a few times. That's why, like whatever. Like there's some other like things I could have done. I think there's a possibility I could have played with Puppy like really early on in my career actually, and Coral and stuff. But I didn't fight for that. Like back in like 2000, like before TI4, I also could have got Arteezy. And kicked Sing like after after MLG as well for like a few months. There was like, but like I never wanted to do that. Like I wanted to stick with that team like for the whole year, no matter what.
Okay. And
like you know like we got pretty well at TI4 honestly. Like but like yeah, like throughout the year I was like, oh, we could have done like I never really thought about it, but after like looking back in hindsight, like maybe it was a better idea to get Arteezy. But like yeah, I never thought that way back then. And then you kind of learn throughout your years, whatever. And then whatever, I played with Secrets, and we got Artesia and Universe, which are like quote unquote better players than our Weeha and / Misery. But like Dota doesn't really work like that. It's more about your team synergy. And like you know, Weeha and Misery now have proven like they're fucking amazing. So it's not just like direct comparisons. But regardless, like I kind of got sick of the Secret mentality. It was like very lazy towards the end. The last like few months, especially like going to TI, like we didn't really practice at all.
Oh wow!
And then when we actually started practicing, it was like it felt really tense and rushed because like we weren't practicing regularly. So it's like, oh, now it's time to practice. You know, like oh, we have to make this like work. We don't have much time. And everything just felt really shitty. So going after TI6, I wanted to play with a team that was full of like tryhards, like nerds and tryhards.
Okay.
But and it was a belief that people can learn if they're smart enough and like people can try hard enough. But throughout the year, people didn't really. They got better, but they got better at what they're kind of good at already. Like, but I'm not sure how to explain it. Like, let's say you're good at math, right? And like if you're taught a new concept in math, then you're gonna keep learning math. Like you're gonna keep getting better at math. However, like if you're really bad at art, you're trying to get good at art, then like it's gonna take a long time and it's gonna be awful. Like you're actually not gonna get much better. You're gonna get better, kind of, but not really. Like when you're old, like when you're like 20 plus.
Okay.
Like when you're trying to get better at singing too, like, you're kind of gonna get better, but like, not really.
So that natural connection wasn't there. It almost sounds like what you're getting at.
For some things, right? And then the synergy just wasn't good. For the 5 players, like there was a bunch of problems. Like Demon, for example, like 147, he's like an extremely good pusher, like tire pusher. That's why he's like kind of a really good captain. Because he calls for these like 5-man plays for these objectives, but because like the rest of the players weren't good at ganking, like, and even if we're good at ganking, it doesn't really matter. Like for example, let's say for some reason AUI is really good at ganking, and he's playing anti-mage. Like he's not ganking anything, So like it doesn't work that way. Like you need more than that, and like it just so happens that like overall on the team we just didn't have enough of that, so we had to find more. And then I really want to I play a Pi, and it's not about before that. So it's like the belief of we promised each other, except for MSS because he wasn't part of it, and then Boba ditched instantly anyway, so that promise is instantly broken. But to stay together and to learn and to play the TI, and like we didn't have any doubts of that. Like I was offered some teams after Boston Major or whatever, and like somewhere down the line as well. However, like after Kiev qualifiers, or like even before Kiev qualifiers, after ESL Genting, like the first tournament after Boston Major, like you can always feel like things are not going to work out, and like people are already getting very antsy, and they're complaining about each other behind their backs, and everything's already like it's already happening. Like people are making weird noises when they play. They're just getting very frustrated, like in game, outside of game, like everywhere. It just feels like the loss of hope. And there's no way anyone really believed that team could win anymore. And like I definitely made a very big like I broke a promise, like a very important promise. And so did the other players, right? That allowed this kick to happen, or wanted the kick to happen actually as well. But I don't know. It got really weird because, like, for me, it was like multiple principles. Like, it was a strong principle that I was breaking, but like there was another principle that ended up being stronger. It was like, am I going to play like one of my principles is that I will do whatever it takes to win, right? Except cheating. Yeah. But my other principle is like to just not lie. But I could not believe that I could win with that team anymore. Like I just can't believe it. It was actually I can't force it. Like I spent a few months trying to force it. Like, oh yeah, we can do this. We can still do this. But like deep down, it just didn't feel that way.
I mean, if that's the case, if that's the case, you moved on. 1437, he went on to obviously end up doing very well with TNC. SVG became a coach for EG. Then you picked up Fata and Pylai Dai right here, and you ultimately ended up qualifying at least for TI7. So in hindsight, almost, it seems like for all parties, it perhaps worked out in a lot of ways. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it ended up working for... I mean, I'm not sure about SVG. Maybe he wanted to play. But it ended up working out for everyone. Kind of. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, I really wanted to win, and like I was like, even if like I'm not gonna make excuses. Like I feel like I sure I betrayed them as well, but I feel like they actually betrayed me as well, or like we all betrayed each other because we didn't try our best. I don't feel like we tried our best. I don't think we were actually putting everything into it. and that was like also the promise, right? Like, it was like to stick together, but to also try our best and learn and to get better. Blah blah. Like I don't think anything was really done. Like no, I mean, we were trying, but it wasn't like that. It wasn't pure heart or passion. It wasn't like we believed in each other anymore.
Yeah.
So I want to win more than anything, and we like I thought about these things. I told MSS and AUI about it, and they're like, yeah, they feel the same way. AUI was gonna leave the team apparently. Like,
okay.
So, like,
wow.
he was like, this team won't work anymore. I'm just gonna leave. I was like, what the fuck? Like, or he's gonna change roles or something. Like, everything's gonna be weird. And MSS agreed, like entirely. Like, he had the same thoughts. Like, everyone had the same thoughts. Honestly, like I feel like maybe except Demon, and I'm not sure if he had the same thoughts, but like I'm sure everyone had something in the back of their head that it wasn't gonna work, and we just yeah.
Well, you made the move, like I said. So you brought Paladana. It sounds like you were looking forward to playing with him. You got the chance to, of course, with the new team. Again, you got to swap some roles around as well. Ultimately qualified for TI7. Did so very well there. Preparing for TI7, take me back. I mean, did you feel like you guys prepared very well? Did you feel good going into TI7?
Definitely no. It felt really bad. Like even going to the TI qualifiers. Like the team just didn't have enough tournaments, like to be. Yeah, like we needed a major / TI to lose really badly for us to like understand each other better and like actually have a real talk and like get better. And we didn't really have that. And then going to TI, like right when the roster changed, we were actually extremely strong. Honestly, like I feel like we just lack experience and like we just choked in our draft and our play against EG at Milan Masters. I felt like we should have won that tournament. I think everyone feels that way on the team. Like before in scrims, we played EG only in scrims basically, and we played them like probably 20 times, and we won 18 of those games or something. Like, we actually destroyed them every game, and we destroyed every scrim. And when we went to Milan Masters as well against every team, like really one-sidedly. And it's because the patch really fit us. Like AUI was playing AUI is being AUI, you know, he was like playing TI5. Like he had some heroes that no one else had, like Enchantress or Treant.
Yeah.
And I think that was it. But yeah, and then people had to ban them. They just had to because they can't play against it. He's just too good at those heroes. He's different. He plays them differently, and he's just too good. And then we had the classic Paladai Wisp, and like Fada's heroes were like a peak as well as like Lina, Ember, Queen, like these heroes. And he was like spamming them only in pubs. Yeah, he doesn't really play these invokers as much, or whatever, you know. And then it also was a good patch for me on that team in particular because we weren't very good at tower pushing because we lost Demon, right? And he was our tower pusher. But I'm kind of good at tower pushing. I'm pretty good. But and I played his Bristolbacks and Medusas that allowed for our team to group up. And so everything was just fitting, except for MSS. I'm not sure about him, like how it was, but he's MSS. He's pretty solid, so he's just gonna play. So yeah, we felt really strong. But then the patch hit, and it ended up being a patch where I felt like it was more about Earth Spirits and like Sardars and like stunners and like Earthshakers. Like you had to stun people, and you couldn't be lame anymore. You can't have this AUI guy like farming one lane and destroying the enemy carry. Like, that's what he does. He plays like some techies. He goes to your lane. He makes you feel like shit. Like your carry is like fighting a support, and the support is owning you. Yeah. Like, he's some Enchantress. He goes to your lane. He freaking emphasis you. You're like, what? Get me out. There's a Treant punching you constantly from invisible until you leave the lane. And like when we hit TS7, like it wasn't really like that, right? It was about these Earth Spirits. It was about these sort of stunning playmaking heroes that have to do a lot with very little farm and have to. It just didn't fit his style, at least not right away. And he only played 4 for like a few months. You know, he wasn't. He couldn't just switch to something more natural.
Yeah.
So I'm sure he can do it if he puts more time into it. But yeah, like we just didn't have enough time. And then the heroes that I played that allowed us to push towers, like Bristleback and Medusa, that allows us to play aggressively. Like they weren't really that good. They were pretty nerfed. Like no one really played them. Medusa was only playing mid and only with Lich or Drow. So I wasn't gonna play it, and yeah, everything just kind of fell apart for us. Yeah.
So I mean, knowing what your preparation was like, would you say the results kind of played out as you almost expected, or did you at least expect to do better than you did?
I mean, the thing is, like, it really depends. Like, the thing of TI is that the bottom 8 teams or bottom 10 teams in this TI are extremely situational, and you can't actually, unless you get upper bracket, you actually can't expect to do much. You need some luck, you need some mentality, you need something else. Because what happens at TI is you get top 4 in your group, which is extremely fucking hard in TI, and you're in upper bracket. And then whatever. Most likely, actually, you're gonna be like some TNC. You're gonna get like 5th or something. You're gonna play against the number 1 seed on the other team on the other bracket, and that bracket's gonna have like some first place team that has 0 losses or 1 loss, like some alliance or something. And then you're gonna lose. It's over. You're gonna go fucking down to the loser bracket. That's what happened at TI5 for us. I mean, when I was playing against Steedek, there was no help. Like Steedek was the best team in that tournament. Like, for sure. And then Viking, we just get wrecked. And then we go loser bracket. But then you still play a best of 3, and you're playing against like 2 loser bracket teams that play against each other. Like, so you can keep going, right? But what happens if you get bottom 8, bottom 4 is that you play some best of 1, and best of 1 is like not really Dota anymore, honestly. Like it is, but it also isn't. Like, it's a lot of preparation, a lot of mental game, and a lot of kind of luck, because you're just gonna use some strat and they're gonna use some strat, and hopefully your strat will beat their strat. And there's no real you can't field out the enemy, you can't like learn about them, you can't like a lot of things just get really weird really fast. You have to play very safe. Everything just so was you lose the best of 1, you're out, right? That's pretty much it.
So was it right after the match almost? Like, did it take a couple days to ultimately decide for you personally that NP/Cloud9 wasn't going to be your future anymore, or did that take longer? What was the deal? How did that come about?
It was definitely not. I'm sure it was like right at the moment that it was definitely not going to be a thing anymore. But like the players I would play with, it wasn't really certain like what would happen, because I don't mind most of them. Actually, I don't mind anyone, honestly, but I wouldn't play with some of them right away. Like, not right away, like maybe in the future, but not right away. Okay. It's just too much, it just feels really weird when you do that. You want something fresh.
Yeah.
That's all.
Well, you got that now with this new team, so now we're kind of caught up to Fnatic here. So on the other side of it now, this new team coming together, Ohio, DJ, you, Excalibur, and Pylite. It's quite the, somewhat of a mix of players. First off, starting with the roster as a whole, how did this roster come together with Fnatic?
I mean, I don't know. I don't know how much I can talk about, because like when it comes to Dota post TI shuffle, there's like a lot of Game of Thrones.
I know, yeah.
And like there's these Reddit people who are like, oh, why don't teams just announce their rosters? Oh yeah, they're keeping us in the dark. We demand to know. We deserve to know. Honestly, they don't deserve shit. I don't know what the fuck they're on about. But like if you really can't, because there's gonna be like, you have to sign contracts and you have to negotiate that. You can't, and like people just leave. Like they say they're playing for you, but they don't play for you. They just go away. Like, because and you can't blame them, like OG, like no one knew OG was gonna have a roster change pretty late into the game, and then like Rezo was part of a different team, and then all of a sudden OG's like, yo, we want to come, and Rezo's like, all right, sure. What can you say? But I mean, like that's like one example, but like there's a lot of these examples. I'm not singling them out. I mean, there's actually so many of these examples. And then like who's gonna take Rezo's spot? Like it just keeps trickling down. I don't know how much I can. Like, it was actually I'm just not talking about it. So it was actually fucking Demon who told me to join Fnatic.
Okay.
And then I thought about it. I thought it was a pretty interesting idea. I had another choice in mind. I wanted to play with PBD.
Okay.
For once, like, and but this time I was rejected, not by him, but it was like there was like better choices, I guess. This is Rezo at first, but then like whatever, like like I didn't really feel as strong about it anymore. Like if I wasn't like gonna be high priority.
Okay, that's fair.
Because even if Reza was taken, it was like kind of weird. What happens next? And it's not just PBD itself; it's like the whole team, like how they feel. So yeah, I just and this when I talked to Fnatic, they really wanted this. Like it felt that way.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so yeah, I was gonna settle with a Fnatic somewhere down the line. I'm pretty fast with these sort of things. Actually, I like to commit really fast. I like to feel strong about it. And then we had to figure out a mid player. And okay, so the whole thing about Demon was like, Demon asked me to join, but then I talked to Ohio and I was like, yo, I want Paladai instead. So like, it's like some Game of Thrones shit.
Oh man.
And I don't know where Demon's going now, but that guy works hard in these roster shuffles. So I'm sure he's gonna go to Peru or something. He's gonna do something. he's gonna get somewhere. And yeah. So we had to find our mid player, and we wanted a bid. But
Okay.
like that negotiation failed, and then we were looking around for mid players, like watching replays. I mean, it was personally me. I was watching a lot of replays, and then I was looking at like we wanted something new, like someone fresh that we could help get better,
Yeah.
and someone who worked hard. And I was watching like Excalibur games. He's like really high armor. He like doesn't feed much, and he plays a lot. Like, he plays actually so fucking much. And like a combination of these three like things and knowing him personally, like how he is as a person, like he's gonna try to learn. He's not gonna really be cancerous. He's gonna be chill, and play his game. Like we kind of wanted that, and yeah, so we settled for him.
All right, so you
that's
got
a lot simpler than I thought it was gonna be.
well, no. So you got your 5-man roster right here, and the organization though itself. I'm curious. Fnatic is obviously not only a big name organization in Dota, but especially in esports as a whole. It's one of the bigger organizations out there. Do you feel pressure at all knowing that you're playing for such a big organization, or for you, is it just another team?
No, the thing about Dota is that like there's so much pressure from yourself and from your teammates or from whatever around you that there's a lot of other pressure, like my mom pressures me. But like you don't really feel it. Like it doesn't really exist like on a day-to-day basis. It's not like there's some like Fnatic like cheerleader like in our boot camp is like, yo, you gotta win for Fnatic. So not really. You don't really feel it at all.
Okay. So are you ready for this upcoming season, would you say? I mean, there's a lot of events, of course, coming up. Do you, well, I wrote it this way. How many events, do you plan to just play in every event that you can possible? Have you kind of planned that out yet?
I mean, at the very beginning, you're always just going to try to qualify for everything. And then depending on what happens, right? Like, if you have the luxury to pick and choose, but usually you don't, like, there's only a few teams, like, there's only, like, I would say 5 to 6 teams in the world, usually, or even less than that, of the new upcoming patch, of the new upcoming tournament format. It's only going to be, like, 1 to 5 teams, 1 to 3, 4 teams, honestly, that can pick and choose. And everyone else will just have to fight it out. Because the format is not very good, but like whatever.
Yeah,
it's extremely cutthroat, and it's very unfair. To the skill of the teams. Like for example, like Peru will always have a slot, but I would say that the top 2 to 3, 4 teams in any single region will beat the top team in Peru, in my opinion. I mean, it cuts a little close, like the top 3 in C or top 3 in NA. Maybe the dirt team, maybe they won't win, but they most likely win, honestly, and they mostly destroy them. Yeah. But they're always gonna get a slot.
Well, that's actually on that topic. Something I meant to bring up before too was you going to Southeast Asia. I mean, what was the decision behind that? Is that something that was more the team with Fnatic that you're like, okay, I'll go there, or did you actually want to play in Southeast Asia?
I definitely don't want to play in Southeast Asia if I had a chance, like if I had a choice, but because I want to stay home. Right? I like my home.
Yeah,
but like you do what you gotta do, and like when it comes down to it, it really doesn't really matter. Like I'm just gonna be in the house, and I'm gonna have in front of my computer,
Well, what about the competition of teams? I guess is more so the question. Like, what about the teams you're playing against now? Is there part of you that thinks it's going to be tougher? Is it going to be easier?
It really depends, right? Like, it really depends. No, it's not really something you think about. Like, I mean, maybe it is. It should be. Like, some teams like MVP think about that. Like, I didn't really get the luxury to think about that. And like, there's no real reason to think about that. Like,
yeah.
Like, I knew if I played for Fnatic that we would play in Southeast Asia, and that's it. So whatever. I didn't even really have it in mind. But like, if you really take a look at the picture, the grand picture of things, it really depends. Like, for example, usually what happens is that the Europe should be by far the easiest. Like, I mean, not by far the easiest, sorry, but like one of the easier regions this season. Because like for example, last year, NA was extremely easy because we won every final qualifier and we were not that good. We were pretty bad. But what happened was second place was EG. No, second place was DC and third place was EG, right? So what ends up happening is DC and EG will always be invited to every single fucking tournament that's in the West.
Yeah.
Or at least one of them. And then EG, because they're always invited to every other tournament, that they will not play some of the other tournaments. So what ends up happening is that you're in a qualifier, and those two teams are not in the qualifier. So those two teams generally is going to be the easiest. Like, for example, this in this format, Europeans, I think, have the most tournaments. I'm not sure. Maybe Americans, something like that. And Liquid got first place, right? So they're going to be invited to most tournaments. And OG probably will be invited to some tournaments. Mm-hmm. And in that case, the qualifiers will be slightly easier because they're going to have more slots too, because most tournaments are European. Like something like that. It gets weird. It really depends on like which region wins. But like going by this format, the C region is actually one of the easier regions, depending on how strong Mineski is or how strong we are, right? Because like TNC is a really strong team, but like they're not as good. Like they're probably not as good as these OGs and Liquids. So if you're fighting for one slot, which is extremely brutal, then it's kind of an easier region.
Okay.
Yeah, it really depends on number of slots, right? Like if there's 2 slots, everything changes instantly. Like C will actually be harder than all the other regions. Like that's just how it depends on the slots. Like right now, like NA is like EG and PVD team and like whatever, and it's actually so fucking hard. China's insanely hard. Like what the fuck is China actually? I don't understand.
No, it always is. Let's be honest. Over there, especially. So, are you frustrated? Like a lot of players sounds like right now that there hasn't been like the point system announced yet, or you're not really bothered about that. You just know it'll kind of work out.
No, I mean at the end of the day, I'm just a player. Like I do a lot of complaining and whining and stuff, but unless if it's like pubs, I don't really whine. Like I never whine about patch notes, for example. Like you just kind of deal with it, right? Like it doesn't really matter. Like regardless of like I'm not gonna like boycott the game. Like
no,
I'm just, like it doesn't matter. Really, I'm always gonna like as much as I whine and stuff. Like I don't really care that much. Like that. You have to just win.
What about the FPL
I
action?
Think it's not fair though.
Yeah, it is. It is a little frustrating, it seems like, but hopefully that comes out soon. Well, what about the FPL action that you're missing out on going to Southeast Asia now? Is that frustrating for you, or do you not care about that?
I mean, it was pretty damn frustrating for Pi. I think he really wanted to play it, but like for me, I don't know. Like, I would like to play too, but like it's hard to be frustrated about it because I haven't experienced it. Like a good FPL league, like all the leagues in Dota 2 were shit, and then before this one. And then, like, they're only good for, like, a week anyway, so who knows. But this one, it seems like, is the most hype. It seems like it was way more hype. It seems like it's going to keep lasting. But I haven't experienced it, so I don't even know what I'm missing, really. I'm like some farmer, like, some guy who's, like, been farming all his life. I've never seen a TV. Like, I don't know what I'm missing. This is some caveman, you know.
Well, it sounds like a fun journey ahead of you this year, EternaLEnVy, and over there in Southeast Asia. And it sounds like you guys are set up to have a good time and practicing hard. Want to thank you for joining me here on this interview. Any shout-outs you want to give? Anything else you want to say?
Yeah, shout out to my fans and the people who watch my stream. Shout out to NRN, who helped me a lot last year. Kind of for free, honestly. Like, you got paid barely anything. We didn't get enough money, really. And then, yeah. Because we spent a lot of money on computers and stuff. Anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When are we going to see Fnatic play first? When do you guys play?
I think in 6 days.
Okay.
We're going to play some qualifier.
You ready? You feeling good?
I mean, there's 6 more days.
6 more days.
I feel nothing. I feel literally nothing.
Okay. All right. Well, EternaLEnVy, always a pleasure, man. Obviously, best of luck. We'll be watching. So good luck this season. All right, guys. Really cool stuff to hear there. I'm sure you guys are, just as excited as I definitely am and was to get that interview in there with EternaLEnVy and to really hear about it. Definitely is. It's eye opening in a lot of ways as far as it's stuff that we just maybe don't realize being on the outside, being these spectators or whatever of what truly does go on behind the scenes. And I think it is important that, again, there is a bit of that transparency to really continue to show that it's a very, as he was calling it, Game of Thrones-esque life out there as far as being a competitive esports player in general, let alone in the Dota 2 scene. But especially during these roster shuffle periods, it's very cutthroat at times. It's Wild West, whatever way you want to describe it. Very interesting to hear. Even as he mentioned there, that how there was a case that he was possibly going to be playing with the PPD stack. I mean, how crazy is that? And then because they wanted resolution over him, he decided, I'm going to do my own thing. And then as we ended up finding out, PPD stack ended up with PyCat there. So it's crazy to think, how this all happens and how it kind of, goes back and forth at times, I'm sure. Anyways, we're really happy that we had the chance to have him on. And obviously looking forward to seeing how they do over there in Southeast Asia. So one other thing I did want to talk about before kind of wrapping things up here on the show was the announcement of the Kings Cup. The Kings Cup America region. So I've mentioned this in the early part of the show here. First segment there. This is the qualifier essentially for the North America, or the more so the Americas region for Dota Summit 8, basically, for the Summit 8 event. So the winner would, qualify for the Summit 8 event here. So there's 8 teams. This is the first action that we're getting when it comes to this new season here. And it kicked off, as I'm recording this, it actually kicked off yesterday with 8 teams. You got Complexity, Digital Chaos, which, again, we don't even have the roster yet, VGJ Storm, Infamous, Digital Chaos South America, Team Leviathan, which is BSJ, Sammy Boy Jenkins, Newsham Slayer, the Dire or PPD stack, and then Iceberg Esports. This is a team that qualified through the open qualifiers, actually. But you're looking at names like Bryle, Charlie Dota, Brax, Jabs, and Clairvoyance. So definitely some names that you would recognize there. And, kind of pretty cool to see some of these solid names qualifying through the open qualifiers and thus playing in this event now. So it's actually going to be all 8 teams. It's just one group stage. They each play each other twice, and then the top 4 move on to a playoff bracket, and then you, of course, play it out from there, best of 3 into a best of 5 final. So that's taking place throughout these couple of weeks here. By the time next week's show happens, we'll be in the playoff stage, I believe, so that'll be fun to kind of update. But as of right now, there's only 1 day's worth to update you on. But I think the biggest thing to take from the first day was Infamous going 2-0 over the Dire, or Peter Pan Dam stack, and it wasn't even close. Infamous absolutely crushed them. Now, to be fair, Zai was not there. They were actually using Demon as a ringer, and Misery was actually playing the off lane because of that too. So, yes, there was a little bit of a quote-unquote excuse there, but I think it's just more evidence that this is not going to be a team that just all of a sudden explodes onto the scene and is going to start dominating, right? It is going to take time. I don't even know if they're potentially going to qualify top 4. I actually don't believe they're going to qualify top 4. in this event. If I had to predict, I would think it's going to be Complexity, perhaps a new Digital Chaos team, VGJ Storm, and maybe even a Team Leviathan or even Digital Chaos South America. But I really don't know if PPD Stack is a team I would expect to go top 4. Once again, not because it's a team that I don't expect to do well in the end, but just early on, it may be a bit of a struggle. Other results, ICE actually did defeat Digital Chaos South America in their first series 2-0. So that's Iceberg Esports there, again, the open qualifier team. And then VGJ Storm defeated Leviathan 2-0 as well there. So actually, I'm looking at an update from today. Now, Complexity was scheduled to play today. I'm recording this show September 7th here, so it'll be on a Thursday evening. However, they did have to reschedule it. Complexity right now, they are going through a transition year of literally moving in some sense, because their gaming house, their team house is actually normally in, I believe it's Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And for anyone that's following the news right now or lives in America even, you would probably know that there's a Hurricane Irma is actually going through there into this weekend, and it's expected to possibly do a fair amount of damage in that area with wind damage, rain damage, whatever. So Complexity, the team, actually, they've made a point to move out of the team house for at least now, and BTS was actually kind enough to offer them their team house in Southern California. So I believe they flew out even earlier today to that team house. But as a result, their matches got postponed. I think they are going to be playing tomorrow, what will be Friday. So pretty much as you're hearing this, they should be playing later on. So we will have to wait one more day for their debut. But of course, that's secondary to obviously their safety. And, big shout out to BTS as well for, of course, bringing them in at this time. So that's the King's Cup, though. Definitely look to check that out. It's pretty much happening, I believe it's like every day, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern, or 4 p.m. Eastern, or 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. What would that be, Central European Time? That would be 2200 Central European Time, if I am not mistaken there. So, yeah, every day all the way into next week. And again, we'll keep an eye on that throughout these next couple of episodes here as well. There's also some ROG Masters qualifiers taking place right now as well for ROG Masters event coming up here. So there are a couple of these qualifiers, again, starting to kick off. I think there's even some open qualifiers that are starting for said events. But by next week's show, I know we keep kind of saying this. Hopefully we will start to have, even a lot more. We are starting to get something, though. Again, the King's Cup is a great example of that. And I know I'm hyped to see it, and I know many are, that we actually have Dota 2 back now in the competitive format. So, all right. I think that pretty much covers it, though, for our today's show. Once again, a big shout out to EternaLEnVy for joining us on the show. And I look forward already to doing it next week, to doing another podcast show next week, that is. Not interview EternaLEnVy again. I'm sure, I would love to be honest. But no, he's going to be a busy guy here and grinding. As I did mention on next week's show, can already tease it because we've already done it. I will be joined by Black, currently teamless. But again, we do talk about that whole situation. And we'll see what's coming up for him throughout this next year at this time. But thank you as always for tuning in, guys. Again, big shout out to EternaLEnVy. Shout out to Z-Rock and his brother enjoying the wedding, I'm sure. I'll have him back on next week as well. And next week's show, I might as well tease this as well. What I wanted to kind of do today, but again, postponing to next week, we're going to do some preseason rankings. I always love doing team rankings, and I figured right now is a perfect time to do that, right? Where we'll do some preseason rankings, take a look what we think for each of the regions, even give our perhaps like a top 5 list as far as what we think are the top 5 teams in each region, and then see how that kind of plays out throughout the year. And we'll make it not a every week thing, but something we'll do multiple times throughout the season here. I know rankings are always fun and great for discussion, so look forward to that as well. And then one other thing I do actually want to try to start too. I've been thinking of ways to constantly get the community involved with with the podcast show. And I think a simple way that could be done is what's actually called a bold predictions segment. So if you want to actually tweet at me or use the hashtag bold. Oh wow, what did I use the hashtag boldprodota or prodota bold? What did I make it? Damn it! Now I forget. I want to say it was DotPro bold. There you go. DotPro bold. I'm all over the place. Sorry. Hashtag DotPro bold with your prediction of essentially a bold prediction of what you think will happen in this upcoming year. So, for example, if I was to say, I think the PPD stack will have more success than Evil Geniuses in this upcoming season. Hashtag DotProBold. I don't actually think that's going to happen, but just to give you an idea, and then we'll actually take a look at those and perhaps discuss them on the show on what we think of the possibilities here. So there you go. Also, actually, one more thing. I meant to announce this as well, or talk about this real quickly. The gaming organization's Immortals. This is actually, again, one of the bigger esports organizations out there. They're in League of Legends, CSGO. They're in the Smash community, I know, amongst other things. Their CEO officially announced that they want to get into the Dota 2 scene, and they are actively looking for a Dota 2 team. Who knows? Who knows where they could end up? I'm actually very curious. Are they going to possibly go after a team like, dare I say, an OG, where it's more of a player-owned organization and try to maybe work something out there? Or will they maybe go after, of course, one of these unsponsored teams? There are a couple out there. The Keizu team comes to mind. Of course, you have a couple of these North America teams. You have the Era, Sindarin, that squad there I could definitely see being a part of it. So that's something else to look forward to, though, on top of everything here. Oh, yeah, the Mouse Sports, they're remaining. The Greek squad is staying together. That's the final thing. Ladies and gentlemen, we are wrapping up for the show here tonight. Have a good night. I'll see you guys next week on the DotPro Show. Until then.